All right, so today we are going to be diving deep into DOGE, the rebirth of a nation.
Oh yeah, this one. This book.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, it's making waves.
Big time.
With some pretty radical ideas.
Yeah.
About how to reshape the U.S. government.
Totally.
Like a complete system reboot.
It is. And what's really fascinating about DOGE is it doesn't just like complain about what's wrong.
Right.
It actually lays out a plan.
That's what I like.
To fix things, yeah.
Plan of action.
The plan of action.
So where do they even begin with this whole thing? What's the problem they're trying to solve?
Well, they paint this pretty stark picture of where the U.S. government stands today.
Yeah.
And some of these numbers are crazy.
Oh, yeah. They throw out some wild stats right off the bat.
Right out of the gate.
Like a national debt topping $36 trillion.
I know. And if you break that down per citizen, it's like over $106,000.
For every person.
It's wild.
In the country.
Yeah. And what's even crazier is the burden on each taxpayer.
Because it's not everyone who pays taxes. So when you look at it from that angle, it's over $273,000 per taxpayer.
Gosh.
It's decades of spending more than what's coming in.
Yeah, and it's not just about the money, right?
Yeah.
The book argues that this inefficiency has really eroded trust in the government.
Absolutely. And DOGE really hits on the human cost of all of this, you know? Think about delayed services decisions made behind closed doors.
Right.
It creates this feeling of being powerless. You have no say.
Are you just stuck in this system?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
And it's not serving you.
So into this mess comes DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yes.
What's their game plan?
Well, DOGE is presented as this bold solution, you know? A whole department dedicated to overhauling how the government operates from the inside out. And it's all about making it leaner and more agile. And it's guided by these principles of efficiency, transparency, and accountability.
So it's not just about like budget cuts.
No.
It's like a whole cultural shift.
Totally. A complete revamp.
Okay, so that's where this dream team they've assembled comes in.
Okay.
Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Mr. Disruptor himself, is leading the charge on the technology side.
Makes sense. Right.
Given his track record with,
With Tesla, SpaceX.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
So what's his role?
Well, he's all about efficiency and innovation, so it seems like he's going to apply that to the government itself.
Oh, wow.
But it's not just cold, hard tech, right?
Right.
There needs to be a human element to this whole thing, and that's where Vivek Ramaswamy comes in.
Okay.
So you've got the tech visionary and the ethical leader.
A good balance.
Yeah, and the book really emphasizes that it's not about sacrificing people for the sake of saving money.
Okay.
It's about using tech to build a government that actually works better for its citizens.
I like that.
Yeah.
So how do they actually plan to pull this off?
Well, they're bringing in some serious firepower, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Imagine AI-powered analysis just combing through government spending, finding all that waste and just eliminating it.
That's wild AI fighting government waste.
Yeah, it's like having an army of super efficient auditors constantly on the case.
Okay, so paint me a picture.
Okay.
What kind of waste are we talking about here?
Well, think about the classic example, the $640 Pentagon toilet seat.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
It's not just a funny story. It highlights a much bigger problem.
Right.
Right? And AI can not only flag those kinds of overpriced items, but also analyze entire programs.
Okay, so it's not just about, little things here and there.
No, it's the big picture.
It's about looking at the entire system.
Exactly. Imagine spotting redundancy, like two agencies doing the same thing.
Right.
Or outdated programs that are just wasting money. AI can help streamline the whole system.
So it's not just about saving money.
Right.
It's about making the government actually effective.
More effective. Yeah, exactly. Make every dollar count.
Okay, so AI is one tool in their toolkit.
Yeah.
What else do they have?
Well, another key weapon is transparency.
Okay, transparency. How does that fit into all this?
Imagine all government data becoming publicly accessible.
Wow.
And on top of that, you have AI working to detect and prevent fraud.
That's powerful.
It's like shining a spotlight on everything the government does.
Yeah. No more shady dealings.
Exactly.
Hiding in the shadows.
The book talks about having real-time dashboards.
Wow.
tracking government spending that anyone can access.
So I could just go online and see where my tax dollars are going.
Exactly. That's the idea.
It'd be revolutionary.
And think about the accountability it would create.
Right. Elected officials knowing that everyone's watching.
Yeah, it'd be much harder for fraud to slip through the cracks.
AI is a watchdog.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic here.
Okay.
Bureaucracies are notoriously slow to change.
They are very resistant.
How are they going to actually make this happen?
Well, that's where the idea of an agile bureaucracy comes in.
Okay.
They envision a government that can adapt quickly using tech to break down those silos we talked about.
So ditch the whole "we've always done it this way" mentality.
Exactly.
Embrace a more flexible approach.
Data-driven. Yeah.
Data-driven. Okay.
The book talks about streamlining processes, making it easier for agencies to work together.
So like taking a rusty old machine
Yes.
and turning it into this,
That high-performance engine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But with all this focus on efficiency in tech,
Yeah.
does DOGE forget about the human side of things?
That's a great question, and actually it's a central theme of the book.
Okay.
They stress the importance of retraining programs,
Okay.
career counseling, things like that, to support workers who might be displaced by these changes.
It's about making sure everyone benefits.
Exactly. Everyone benefits from a more efficient system.
Okay, so it's a more humane approach to government reform.
Yeah,
Recognizing that people are at the heart of it all.
absolutely.
Okay, and speaking of people,
Mhm.
DOGE goes even further and proposes this idea of democratizing efficiency.
Oh, yeah.
What does that even mean?
Right. It means making citizens active participants in this whole reform process.
So not just like, listening to people.
No.
It's about giving them a real voice.
Yeah, a seat at the table.
Okay.
So DOGE proposes these online platforms where citizens can crowdsource solutions.
It's like a massive suggestion box
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
for government efficiency.
Yeah, and they outline the specific initiative called the Suggestion Box Initiative,
Catchy.
where citizens can directly contribute to policy changes.
Wow. So it's not just listening to people.
Right.
It's about actually incorporating their ideas.
Exactly. And that's a huge shift in the power dynamic between the government and the people.
Okay, so we've got AI transparency, an agile bureaucracy, citizen engagement. This is a pretty radical overhaul.
It is.
But has anything like this ever been tried before?
That's a great question, and the book actually talks about past reform efforts, specifically the Grace Commission.
Okay, remind me, what was that all about?
So back in the 1980s, there was this presidential commission tasked with finding ways to cut waste in the federal government.
Right.
You sound familiar.
Yeah, it does.
They did this massive review and came up with over 2,400 recommendations for improvement.
2,400.
2,400. That's a lot.
So what happened? Did they implement all of them?
Well, that's where the story gets a little less inspiring.
Uh-huh.
A lot of those recommendations never actually saw the light of day.
Why not?
Well, there was a lot of political pushback.
Politics.
Right, and there just wasn't enough willpower to push them through.
So even with the best intentions, things can get derailed.
Yeah, and the book also points to a lack of follow-through.
Okay.
Even the recommendations that did get implemented didn't have the sustained effort needed to really make them stick.
So it's one thing to identify the problems.
Yeah.
And come up with solutions, but it's a whole other thing to actually make those changes last.
Absolutely.
Okay, so DOGE is learning from history.
Yeah.
It's got this comprehensive plan, a dream team at the helm, but is this just a pipe dream, or could it actually work?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And the answer is complex.
Okay.
There's no doubt that it's a bold vision, but there are some serious hurdles to overcome.
All right, let's dive into those hurdles then. What are the biggest challenges they're going to face?
Okay. So we left off with those hurdles facing DOGE.
Yeah, those challenges they're going to have to overcome.
Right, and the book doesn't sugarcoat it.
Right.
It talks about potential pushback,
Yeah.
both from inside the government
Makes sense.
and from interest groups who might see this as a threat.
Change is scary.
It is.
So how do they plan to deal with that political side of things?
Well, one thing they emphasize is building support across party lines.
So bipartisan support.
Exactly. They need to make this resonate with both sides of the aisle.
So it can't just be seen as like a, Democrat thing or a Republican thing.
Right. It has to be something everyone can get behind.
Okay, so how do they do that?
Well, they argue that efficiency and accountability shouldn't be partisan issues. It should appeal to anyone who wants a government that actually works for the people.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, can't we all agree that a bloated, wasteful government helps no one?
Exactly. And they highlight areas where they could build those bridges.
Okay, like what?
Well, fiscal conservatives, they'd probably be drawn to the idea of cutting waste and streamlining spending.
Right.
Smaller government.
Okay, yeah.
But on the other hand, folks who care about social programs, they might be persuaded by the idea that eliminating waste frees up resources.
Right. That could then be directed towards those very programs.
Exactly. So it's like a win-win.
Okay.
But it goes beyond just working with politicians.
Okay.
They also talk about bringing the public along.
Engaging the citizens.
Exactly. Make them participants in this process.
So it's not just top-down.
No.
It's also grassroots.
Right. Town hall meetings, online platforms, public forums, all sorts of ways to engage people directly.
So making government less mysterious,
Right.
more accessible.
More accountable. And by doing that, they hope to build this momentum for change.
That's powerful.
Right. But momentum alone isn't enough.
Right. You got to show results.
Exactly. People need to see that this is actually making a difference.
Okay.
So they suggest focusing on areas where the inefficiencies are really obvious and the solutions are relatively straightforward.
Okay. Low-hanging fruit.
Exactly like government procurement.
Okay.
They spend trillions on goods and services, and that whole process is a mess.
I've heard the stories about the government paying like hundreds of dollars for a hammer.
It's ridiculous, and it points to a bigger problem.
Right.
So they propose using AI and data analysis to streamline that whole process.
Okay, so bringing some of that private sector efficiency to the government.
Exactly. Make sure they're getting the best value for their money.
And those early wins?
Yes.
Those are key.
They build credibility.
Okay.
Show people that this is the real deal.
Prove you can walk before you run a marathon.
Well, exactly. But even with all that, there's still this massive hurdle.
Huh?
The bureaucracy itself.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a giant ship.
Slow to turn.
Resistant to change.
Okay.
So they talk about creating a more agile and responsive bureaucracy, one that embraces innovation and data.
So a cultural shift within the government itself.
Exactly. And they suggest things like performance-based metrics for agencies.
So you're rewarded if you do well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
but
if you don't,
there are consequences.
okay,
And empowering those frontline workers.
the people actually doing the work.
Right. To suggest improvements.
Okay, so it's like a bottom-up approach.
Yeah. Using tech to break down those silos between agencies, make it easier for them to work together.
So technology for teamwork.
Exactly.
Okay, we've talked about the political challenges, the bureaucratic,
Yeah.
hurdles the need for those early wins.
Yeah.
But there's another big question here.
Okay.
The ethics of using technology to transform the government.
You're absolutely right. And that's something the book takes very seriously.
Yeah.
They have a whole chapter dedicated to the ethical dimensions of efficiency. So finding that balance between wanting a more efficient government,
Right.
but also protecting those values of fairness and transparency.
Exactly. And they dive into specifics about how they plan to address these challenges.
Okay, like what?
Well, one big concern with AI is bias.
Right. If you train an AI system on biased data,
Yeah.
it's going to make biased decisions.
Exactly. And that's a huge problem when it comes to things like allocating resources.
Right. Or determining who's eligible for benefits.
Exactly. You don't want to bake discrimination into the system.
Right.
So they emphasize using diverse data sets
Okay.
and regularly auditing those AI systems.
To make sure they're not perpetuating any biases.
Exactly. And they talk about having humans in the loop.
Okay, so oversight.
Yeah. Making sure these systems are being used ethically.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. And another concern is privacy.
Right.
All that data the government collects.
Yeah.
How's that going to be used in these AI systems?
People are going to be worried about that.
Of course.
Okay, so what do they say about that?
They propose strict privacy protocols,
Okay.
anonymization techniques,
Okay.
clear limits on how that data can be used.
So transparency and control.
Exactly. And they also address the impact on the workforce.
Okay.
One of the biggest fears is job losses.
Right. Robots taking over government jobs.
Right. But they argue that the goal isn't to cut jobs, it's to create a more effective government.
Okay.
They talk about retraining programs,
Okay.
transitional assistance for workers who might be displaced.
So making sure those people aren't left behind.
Exactly. So they're really trying to address those ethical concerns head on.
Building that trust.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the political side, the bureaucratic challenges, the ethical considerations,
Yeah.
and their strategies for overcoming all of that.
A lot to think about.
It is, but we've been focusing on the U.S.,
Right.
but the book doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't. It goes global.
Global DOGE, that's a big idea.
It is.
So global DOGE,
Yeah.
taking this idea to the world.
It's ambitious.
It is, can a model that's designed for the U.S. really work everywhere?
Well, that's a good question, and the book acknowledges that it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right.
They talk about the need to adapt DOGE's principles
Okay.
to each country's specific situation.
So not forcing it on anyone?
No, it's more about providing the tools and guidance.
Okay, like a toolkit for government reform.
Exactly, and each country can pick and choose what works best for them.
I like that. And the book actually highlights some examples of successful reforms in other countries,
Yeah.
like New Zealand and Singapore.
Right, they're often held up as examples of efficient government.
Yeah, I've heard that. So what do they do?
Well, New Zealand, back in the 80s, they were in a tough spot. Their government was bloated, inefficient.
Sounds familiar.
Right. They were facing similar challenges to what the U.S. is dealing with now.
Okay.
And they decided to make some big changes.
Like what?
They embraced market-oriented principles, privatized state-owned enterprises, and they brought in performance-based metrics for their agencies.
So they really focused on getting results.
They did, and it worked.
Wow.
Their economy bounced back. Their government became more efficient.
So it's possible.
It is. It shows that change is possible.
Inspiring.
Yeah, and then there's Singapore.
Okay.
They've invested heavily in technology.
Okay.
They built a highly skilled civil service.
Makes sense.
And they focused on long-term planning.
Sorry.
And now their government is known for its efficiency and effectiveness.
It's great to see these real-world examples.
It is. It gives DOGE's ideas some credibility.
Right. It's not just theory.
Exactly.
So DOGE could actually be a global leader in this whole movement.
That's what they argue.
So it's not just about fixing our own problems.
No.
It's about sharing what we learn with the world.
Exactly. They talk about offering training programs for officials from other countries.
So like a DOGE university.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. And what about countries that need more hands-on help?
Well, they suggest offering technical assistance, helping them put these reforms into practice.
So being a partner, not a dictator.
Exactly. Recognizing that each country's path will be different.
Makes sense.
And they talk about working with international organizations
Yay.
to promote these principles on a global scale.
So making DOGE a global movement.
Yeah, that's the goal.
It's a big vision.
It is, with big challenges, but also big potential rewards.
It is, imagine a world where governments everywhere are more efficient, more transparent, truly focused on serving their citizens.
That's the dream.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into DOGE, the rebirth of a nation.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. We've explored its potential to transform the U.S. government and maybe even the world.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
It is what stands out to you about DOGE. What questions does this raise for you?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
We'll include links in the show notes where you can learn more.
And explore these ideas further.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.